two, one.
Hi, everyone, and thank you for coming back to another recording of Foul Ball Safety Now Talks. I'm Jordan Scott. I'm with Brianna Ludwig. We're in the middle of April, a day after tax day. Excited to bring on our guest in a few minutes. Our guest host will lead the discussion for a majority of our recording. Before we bring on our guest, I usually like to start off by how Foul Ball Safety Now started back in 2019 and bring us up to speed on what's happening and also include some latest news. So, Foul Ball Safety Now started back in 2019 for sure. I saw something disturbing on the news, and it was a child that got hurt in Houston. And I was a baseball fan my whole life, so I kind of knew that there was always a risky proposition to be at the game and be located in certain sections for sure. But then after seeing that, I realized that there should have been more done. I made a couple of lofty gestures right away to the Mets and the Yankees, and of course, they probably thought I was full of a lot of hot air, and they thought I would go away, but it's almost 7 years later, or 7 years about since and it'll be 7 years in the summer, since I've been making the noise. I've found somebody shortly after that incident, recommended from a lawyer that I knew by the name of Brendan. Brendan's been with me for 7 years. And we've been archiving so many things, as in interviews with victims, interviews with baseball players, many guys, 30 guys that we've interviewed over these years who have gladly revisited their own working experience as baseball players. They had a lot to say. That was exciting. Did some things like publicity stunts and been to court, rented out 5 airplanes, and that was one of the publicity things that I well, at least one of the activities 5 separate times where I rented out airplanes over games like Field of Dreams and try to make people pay attention that they should go to the website and take a look at the campaign. Similar to going to court, hired a lawyer in Illinois, and we were in Peoria court system for about a year. Made some strides, but at the end of the day, we went a few rounds, and I thought we got a nice article in the St. Louis Dispatch, and, at the time, Peoria only had netting, to the edge of the dugout, not even above the dugout. It wasn't until the beginning of 2025 when they finally put netting above the dugout, and if anyone sees that video from 2019, the ESPN, video that I put up on my website, which we call Exhibit A, people can connect the dots and see why are any human beings, let alone children being put in these positions of facing these fastballs. And Peoria was one of the later ones to act just by putting nets above the dugout, but that's not even necessarily the end all be all. Because all ballparks need individual attention, inside and outside, even netting extended past end of dugouts. Balls are still flying over nets. Brianna, who did a great research in 2025, found 45 injuries. People self-reported their injuries on TikTok, where balls were making their way over the net and still making serious black and blue impressions. We've interviewed people like Erwin Goldblum, who was unfortunately sitting next to his wife, who was hit at the Dodger game in 2018 and died a few days later, which was very sad. He was part of 7 of our virtual press conference experiences, a very nice guy. His daughter, Jana Brody, wrote a book, powerful title, Sit Behind the Nets, in dedication to her mom. She mentions me in a couple of passages during the book, which was very nice of her. So yes, I'm trying to take on this matter and just really effectively start a conversation in every zip code, because now colleges are coming into play. A little over a year ago, a Queens College student contacted me and told me, Jordan, we're worried our balls are going over this side and potentially hitting elementary school students. And when you Google Earth Queens College, you'll see there's an elementary school either on the grounds or right next door to the playing field. And they're worried the balls are going over the side. People can see the tab at Foul Ball Safety Now. Look at 5 letters I wrote the administration. On letter number 4, Queens College student reporter, to his credit, put together an article, and we're not singling out Queens College as maybe the only offender. We think all ballparks are synonymous with parking lots and outdoors people can potentially get hit. We just recently did a Google Earth on 46 fields, divisions 1, 2, and 3, and we found all of them looking like they're synonymous with parking lots. Similar to Modesto, California, when an attorney contacted me over a year ago around this time in the spring. He said, "We're preparing for trial, for a summer trial," and his client was hurt in 2023 outside the ballpark, and unfortunately, she was struck in the head. So I know more than one. It could be more than one, or many within 3 or 4 hours that are hitting pavement, window, or people, and that's not cool. And actually, 20-something years ago, I'm in Brooklyn with a group of people, young and old. We're hanging out in Coney Island, and we're at the Cyclones game. The Mets happen to own the Cyclones. Many of these teams are owned by many of these smaller clubs are owned by the parent club, and some of them are individually owned. But there's a direct connection. Major League Baseball, the 30 teams pay the salaries of those 120 teams. And yeah, clearly I was calling all around those 120 teams after that 2019 incident. 21, 22, and 23, still seeing no nets past end of dugouts in 40 of 120 of cities. Not cool. One third of the cities still had no netting past end of dugouts up until at least 3.5 years, 2019, 2023 spring. We're talking like this should have been done when when the world saw this horrific video. And I think any judge in any city who sees this video today and finds out that one of their cities are hosting games with no netting past end of dugout, they'll see this video. They'll say, wait, this is 7 years later and we still have no netting past end of dugout? Yep, there's at least 30 to 40 cities, not Major League Baseball affiliates. I'm not Major League Baseball minor league clubs, but they're called the MLB partner league teams. So I've been following 199 teams. It's been 30 MLB, 120 affiliates, and then another 49 MLB partner league teams. Last year, 60%, 30 of 49, still had no netting past the end of the dugout. So in about a week, I'll be calling around and getting updates for everyone to see if any of them have upgraded. Now we're in year 7. Any judge who sees that video from 2019 and says, wait, this is exact parallel to what's happening in our local city, then why the hell are human beings sitting there? We can't get out of the way. It's all an image that we've all thought, oh, we should be paying attention while we're there. Well, yeah, but 4-year-olds should be able to play patty cake, and people who are a couple should have tender moments if they want. Should be doing anything they want. And if they're telling you not to be there because close calls are coming at a regular basis, that would be the appropriate step, which should have been done years ago. Um, all right. I think we're pretty good. We're up to date, other than 2 weeks ago, something happened in Seattle. A baseball player hit a ball that went over the net, down the line, and unfortunately, it hit the back of the head of an 18-year-old. And Brendan is already speaking with the person's mom, and we'll see how that all unfolds. But it clearly really hit him hard. We have the video. Brianna, how are you?
Doing good, Jordan. Excited to dive into this conversation today. So, without further ado, I'd love to welcome on our guest host for the day. He is a longtime baseball player and fan, lawyer, and actor, Dave Romerman. Welcome.
Thank you to both of you. I appreciate you guys having me on. I'm excited to do this. As a longtime baseball fan, yes, Jordan, I have also seen some of the injuries. Also went onto your website and saw quite a few I wasn't aware of, including one, the Rays game that slipped through the netting, which we'll get into the legalities of it, but I feel like that's one where they tried to protect people but didn't. That might give rise to a claim. And obviously, it's ugly. So I guess I'll start off. I have seen the game change at 46 years old since when I played. I was fairly fast, and they used to teach us to bunt. Mathematically, there's a Society for American Baseball Research, SABR, and sabermetrics. The game has changed as a result of the statistics. The only 2 times it's a good idea to bunt mathematically, if you have a guy on second, you bunt him to third, you have a higher probability of scoring 1 run. And if you have first and second and you bunt them to second and third, you have a higher probability of scoring 1 or 2 runs. Nobody bunts anymore. Nobody does the old butcher boy, chop it into the ground and try and beat out the high bounce before a fielder gets it and throws it. Everybody's about home runs. Everybody's about launch angle. Everybody's fascinated by, hit the ball hard to the pull side, exit velo, exit velo, exit velo. You can't see a home run without StatCast coming on. So players are, even without the statistics to verify it against 1990 or whatever era you choose, players are bigger and stronger. They're hitting the ball harder. The reaction time has decreased. I looked up the human reaction time is usually to catch a ball 200 to 300 milliseconds. Elite athletes are less than that. So a reaction time under 250 milliseconds gives you about a 50-50 chance of catching the ball. 250 milliseconds is incredibly short. It's a quarter of a second. And Major League Baseball, minor league baseball expect fans to react to these line drives with, elite athlete reaction times. And it's just not probable. I mean, it's not a realistic thing to expect someone to be able to do. Even for an elite athlete, it's difficult. So the other big change I noticed, I looked up Camden Yards. It was April 6th, 1992. The White Sox were one of the first new ballparks, and it was kind of in the old style, the 1970s AstroTurf concrete donut. But Oriole Park was made in the much more old school baseball retro park style, which means a lot less foul ground and a lot closer seating, which is
Mhm.
awesome. It gives a much better view, but less foul territory means more batted balls. More balls fall into the stands, of course, because the stands are closer. There's less field to land on. You don't need to do the math. It's kind of inherently, res ipsa loquitur. The thing speaks for itself. It's intuitively obvious. But that also means another pitch. So instead of popping out in the 50 feet of foul ground in one of the old football stadiums that doubles as a baseball stadium, you now have another pitch, which means another opportunity for somebody to hit a hard foul ball, which I would guarantee there's more pitches thrown in 2026 than there were in 1926.
Sure.
So you just have a higher risk. Again, the exit velo is the big focus. So I think the counter arguments, if we could play devil's advocate for a minute, it
Sure.
costs too much money to put up the netting, and fans don't want to watch through a net. Well, I looked up the numbers on that. The high end is a $500,000, $500,000. Major League Baseball can't afford that, apparently. The
Yeah.
minimum, yeah, exactly. I found it one of those I laughed too, but only because I didn't want to cry.
I
The
know.
minimum for a major league ball player is $4,000 a day, 780K for an entire season. So
Right.
it's basically two-thirds, not quite two-thirds of the cost of a salary of one rookie.
Right.
The Dodgers are paying $397 million this year, 407 counting the luxury tax
Right.
calculation.
Right.
The least expensive team is the Miami Marlins at 73 million. I just think that we can't afford it falls completely flat. We don't want to spend the money, sure, but it seems maybe not a drop in the ocean, maybe a whole bucket of water, but a $500,000 is an awful nice salary for anybody for a major league team to peel off that. It's kind of inexcusable if it's just finances. Um, and all the owners are billionaires several times over.
Right.
So I mean, you can't even argue I don't want to spend it. It's absolutely nothing. A 500,000 would be, half a percentage point of $100 million. So it would be
Sure.
0.05% of a billionaire. It's not like they can't afford it. So fans
Sure.
don't
I'm
want to
sure
view
I'm
it.
sure the netting installer would give them a mortgage too. They have good
Yes.
collateral.
Yeah,
So, I mean,
exactly.
please, but that's not the issue. We certainly can get into that, but keep going because you're bringing up some fine points.
Yeah, so nobody wants to see that.
Sure.
78% of people you have on the website there are okay with it. Well,
Yeah. That was an
I would
ESPN
say
survey. I'm gonna
mhm.
buy into it for the moment, but yes, I believe with a little education, even more that would be that would be the number that I think would be fair. Once people understand risk reward, they would be fine with it. So, but I don't even cite that study too often, but I'm glad you did.
I I would even give you another 20%. 2% are crazy, what are you gonna do? But another 20% think it's a
Good,
good idea, they
good.
just don't want the
Yes.
netting in their view. Okay, fine. If that's the preference, then so be it, but it would still be a good thing safety-wise, but why are we
Mhm.
catering to the minority? I mean,
Sure.
America's a democracy, we tend to go with majority rule, I understand sometimes it's a plurality, it's 48 to 46 with, a few points going to somebody else, but if 78% of fans are in favor of that, or
Mhm.
at least think it's a good idea, and it's been done elsewhere, and it's not like I don't have the statistics on that, but it's not like somebody that's installed it past the dugouts or into the dugouts or all the way to the foul line has suddenly seen attendance crater. They went from 3 million one year and had 2.2 million fans come out next year and had the same record on the field.
Mhm.
People aren't going to stop watching baseball. The game, my Reds, I think, came into play 1869. It's the national
Mhm.
pastime. Baseball's not going
Mhm.
anywhere.
Sure. Yeah.
So,
So just to say about the matter of with the netting and in regards to what would we accept as a fan base. First, earnest information. We need to effectively start a conversation. Just kind of get people caught up. Let's call it the People's Committee because we don't have it as of yet. These three-way calls that we're having are supposed to inspire that. And once that happens, then this conversation will grow outside this conversation. Then everything's going to happen. Us three will start the meeting and then we could leave and then they'll work it out. That's how confident I am, Dave, that the group, once we get the group going and talking about it, this is this is what was happening when you went to the game. Yes, 99% of you were never affected. 90% of you probably didn't think about it at all. Maybe 10% people did. But the 90 percenters, those are the people that unfortunately have had the life-altering experiences. We have a statistic up on the website called, a new baseball s I'm sorry, the less than 1% injured club because we know there's
right.
100,000,000 baseball fans. We know 1,000,000 people have not had life-altering experiences, but thousands have. And once the 99 percenters get wind of what we've been working on for 7 years, they'll clearly realize it could have been them a day earlier or 3 weeks later with the concussion or the unfortunate worse. And that's basically what we're doing. We're producing a book right now. Brendan and I were contacted by a law firm around a year ago. They were preparing for trial for the summer. This is involving a bat. This was an ESPN game. You could see the bat going into the stands and the mother turning, and unfortunately, it clipped the kid and the mom. And the team attendants came around. The announcers made a little noise, but not much. They moved on right away. This family was left on their own recourse. They did not have the billionaires come to their aid when they needed the bedside comfort, when they needed to know that the billionaire doctors would be available at their disposal because there's an expression called time is brain. And heck, if I'm going to look for a doctor, would I rather go to the emergency room in the middle of the night, or would I rather have those billionaires making some calls and bringing in their specialists? I think we would feel much better knowing that the best of care was there in the immediate aftermath. Not the case. Years later, they're on GoFundMe. Family could not have been doing great. We never talked to the family, but the case ended up being a settlement. Brendan, who's been working with me, ended up doing like 50 hours worth of work for them to prepare for their trial. And then at the end of the day, this kid grew up nonverbal. Plaintiff's side said the reason why the kid was nonverbal was because of the bat, and they had doctors backing them up, and MLB lawyers said, "Not the reason," and we're able to go inside the transcripts of the proceedings prior to the trial. So, a lot of that stuff is going to be incorporated in our book, and we believe the American public is gonna be like, "Hey, we empathize, we sympathize," and if the Major League Baseball management over the years, 'cause we can find things that management has said, when they may have considered making upgrades. Supposedly, MLB and the players union supposedly negotiated 3 separate times, and the players union said, "We need to have more nets." I wanna see exactly what they spoke about because I can't really buy that. Why didn't the MLB players union say, "It's a non-starter. Our guys aren't gonna hit babies balls in the direction of babies anymore. Let's get it done." And management said things like, "Our fans aren't interested in it." While they possess knowledge, Judge Flanagan said in Rybarski versus White Sox 2018, she implied willful wanton conduct on the White Sox. Of course, they know in the winter months what happened the year before and what they anticipate happening this year. Check out Exhibit A1, people, on the website at Foul Ball Safety Now, published report in 2019. Brendan and I incorporated a lot of our own research. We combined them. People can see. You can almost retrace your steps, just how many foul balls there are per game. 49.9% of the balls go in a particular section. I mean, it's just, like, unbelievable. If you level with the people over the winter, certainly after a 14-year-old boy got hit at Dodger Stadium and died a few days later in 1970, wasn't that the time to open up the dialogue and tell people in those sections that close calls are a regular thing, and maybe you wanna think again? And it took 45 years before Nets went up dugouts above dugouts in 30 MLB places, didn't even get above the dugout till the beginning of 2025 in Peoria, Illinois, an affiliate of the Cardinals, who've also been around for 100 plus years. So we're just making good sounds over here. We just want people to pay attention. 7 years and continuing. Dave, we're in season 7. Welcome.
Yeah, I mean, very good information, and I think the difficulty is, I'm sure this has been on here. I've not listened to every episode of the podcast, but um, it's an assumption of risk. So you don't have to go to a ball game, don't buy a ticket. But again, circling back, I feel like we should tell the 22% who don't want the Nets that. And I also think a lot fewer people would go if they were made aware of the risk.
Mhm.
And I have a list of some of the big lawsuits. 2015, a class action lawsuit that failed basically for teams outside of California because it was lack of jurisdiction. If you're not in California, you're not subject to California law, which makes sense. I think that's the right ruling, but unfortunately, it makes it tough to go after all of Major League Baseball, and that's generally what they go to. They say, and I laugh at this. You go to Yankee Stadium or Citi Field here in New York,
Yeah.
and they have out in right field the general plastic disclaimer placard posted, "Beware of bats and balls leaving the field." Like 420 feet away in the upper deck of the right field seats, I'm going to get hit by a bat. It just kind of shows the who cares attitude of it. And these suits fail for that reason. The issue I think that I can bring that's a little bit novel.
Mhm.
Baseball is playing for many, many years to be the national pastime. It has a special place. One of the big ones is that they have antitrust exemption.
Mhm.
And so they were not held liable. It was, what was it, 1922? Oliver Wendell Holmes, one of the great Supreme Court justices, said it was purely state affairs. And so it's been considered an aberration by modern courts. There was Toulson versus the Yankees in '53 and Flood versus Kuhn. That was when Curt Flood sued Major League
Mhm.
Baseball and the commissioner. And then in 1998, Congress passed a law after the '94 strike, which got rid of the MLB exemption for employment relations, allowing players to sue their employer. Curt Flood was famous because he was the first guy. It used to be every team had just a regional map, just like they do with television rights still, and that was where you could get players. So there were 3 teams in New York until 1957. The Dodgers and the Giants moved out to LA and San Francisco, respectively. Broke a lot of hearts. I've talked to some people who were fans of those teams who kind of stopped watching at that point when Willie Mays headed west.
Yeah.
Um, and Jackie Robinson and Duke Snider and everybody on the Brooklyn Dodgers. But at
Mhm.
the end of the day, the antitrust ruling allowed them to just pick players from their region, and once they had your rights, the only way you were going to another team is if you were traded which was totally at the club's discretion. They would trade contracts, ship you off to wherever, or they would, like Ruth was famously shipped from the Red Sox to the Yankees for the money to build to do a Broadway play. Or you could get cut, and then you could be free to sign with another team. So free agency didn't even come along until I think it was like 1974. Um, and so it was 72, I'm sorry, Flood versus Kuhn. I think it was 74 when it finally passed. So, they have a salary structure even now where you get your 3-year minimum. Some guys are Super Twos, play enough and produce enough to be considered a fourth-year player in their third year. But then you have 3 years where you go to arbitration, and an arbiter picks whether the club's number is right or the player's. So your first 6 years in the big leagues, you don't even have any say over your pay structure, which is to quote the Supreme Court, an aberration. They have antitrust protection. They have taxpayer-funded stadiums, which I looked up 70 to 80% public subsidies since 2000. It's cost $43.1 billion. Between 1970 and 2020, $33 billion in public funds went for major league sports venues in the United States and Canada. It seems like if we're paying out of every check, usually a sales tax, but I've seen it
Right.
done other ways, if we're paying a municipal city stadium tax, it feels like 500,000 of that should go towards netting.
That's
It's
not
just kind of
that's yeah,
inexcusable.
that's not it's not it can't be the cash. So I when you said that earlier and we're speaking about that now, it's not the cash. It opens up a can of worms. I go back to 1913 when the big fat owners
Yeah,
were smoking their cigars and they knew let the maiming commence when the baseball rule came on because they knew that most fans would eventually get struck by balls or bats would have very little recourse. Lawyers wouldn't be interested in taking on the case. I fast forward to 2026. Most states still recognize the baseball rule. So it's very
right,
hard to find a personal injury lawyer. Some of the high profile cases have found lawyers. The Houston situation, Mrs. Goldblum, who Erwin and I have had, 7 virtual press conferences together a few years ago. He wasn't
right.
able to discuss the money they may have gotten as a family, whether it was $1 million or more, he didn't bring it out on what that was, but he came to 7 virtual press conferences of ours. These cases don't get the recognition, and it's sad. I'm getting calls from people asking if I could help them find lawyers, whether it's a woman from Tennessee who was hit by a baseball at one of those Tennessee Smoky games, smoked by a ball, yes, the title and the team title and her situation is apropos, absolutely. She was able and with my New York lawyer to find a personal injury lawyer, and I may circle back with her one of these days and find out how she's doing. She did find somebody to help her. They may have sued, maybe it wasn't a state case, it might have been a federal case, but I have to find out more about the state of Tennessee. I recently got a call from a gentleman who bought a house next to a high school field, and he's concerned because he's had a 13-year battle with the local community school board, and somebody said, the school board member said to him, "This conversation's less than a month old, maybe a month or 2." He calls me and he says, "Jordan, this is what this community school board member told me." He said, "You should it's like buying a house when you buy a house next to a baseball field, it's like buying a house next to a pig farm." So, I don't believe that's true because most people park in parking lots not thinking they're gonna get hit by a ball like the woman in Modesto, California. There could be 1 to 20 balls in 3 to 4 hours that hit the pavement or hit the window or hit somebody in the head. I'm not even sure how many the most came outside and hit the pavement or the window or potentially the people in 3 or 4 hours because I haven't studied it close enough, but I can see it myself. 1 is too many. When people say, "How often?" I say, "Too often." This poor guy, he bought a house And I said, "Well, I don't know what to tell you, sir, but maybe you need to speak with the local eyewitness news and maybe they'll come over your house." Certainly, the developer, I would say that he is a little bit more or she's a little bit more responsible for building next to a baseball field. But the people buying the home, they don't know they're at risk. Why do they have to put two and two, get two together? And why isn't it for years when baseball has the information? We're meeting people who've been working around the game for years and tell us baseball has intimate knowledge of all of this. Judge Flanagan says uses the term willful wanton conduct. She'll say to me, "Jordan, why you keep on talking about me when I meet her one day?" I'll say, "Because you use the term willful and wanton conduct regarding Rybarski versus White Sox." They know. Educate us. Let Brianna and her kid, who's almost 2 years old, tell her where she needs to park at 169 facilities. Why does it have to be synonymous with balls hitting pavement, window, and people? Why is that business as usual, or is that responsible business practices, or is that dark ages practices? I think it's dark ages practices. Brianna and others have the right to know where to park, how to navigate, go into a game, get up and have a snack, relax, have a good time, and be unscathed. If there's a risk factor inside or outside, please educate us. We're not there to figure it out ourselves. Even the broken bat that makes its way over the net in Seattle, 2025, similar to the case that Brendan and I are producing a book about. A bat flies into the stands and hits the mother and the child. This is 8, 9 years later. There's no lessons learned internally by MLB. Broken bat, it's on my website. Jorge Polanco having the game of his life. He hits 2 home runs. Seattle's having a great old time. His next at bat, he breaks his bat. Nobody had known where the bat had gone if you're watching the TV because they didn't show it. Upon commercial, a few minutes later, they show the broken bat coming into the seats like a boomerang, and you even hear the announcer going, "Yikes, look out." Even "yikes, look out." Nobody equated the fact that a bat just came into the seat like a boomerang that could spear your heart or neck. People who saw the Allstate commercial 1,000 times, it's on YouTube, the Mr. Mayhem, he throws the bat over the fence at the park and it goes into the window. Nobody on
I
social
love
media
those
said
commercials.
peep. Nobody said peep. So we're all in the romance and the wholesome and the apple pie. We're still in it. 99 percenters are still living that life. But the 1 percenters have disruption. My lawyer in New York, Lynn, her girlfriend was blinded at Chase Stadium in 1979 and has a 3 generational effect. She tells Brendan and I in one of our interviews that years later, after she was blinded, she goes, her son is playing Little League. And and she's nervous, maybe because she was blinded in one eye, and the kid ended up quitting baseball forever. And now this 8-year-old, maybe 30, and maybe he's telling his own child, "You don't want to play baseball. Look what happened to your grandmother." So those 1 percenters, a lot less than 1%, but thousands of people are done with the game or don't know how to deal with looking at the game because it happened to them. Brianna and others shouldn't have rude surprise, terrible legacy. And that's where it's at. And we can find this information out when we demand accountability and conversation. They'll deflect for as long as they can. And I'll keep on showing up to these conversations with guys like you, Dave. So it's very nice that
Well,
you're joining us.
I appreciate that. Both that you'll keep showing up, and that you're having me here.
Yes.
But one of the unique approaches I think we should be taking in a litigation stance
Okay.
is
Okay.
common carriers. Common carriers mean when the law originated, train companies, buses, trolleys, now includes airlines, and so common carrier liability is a heightened standard for the slightest negligence causing injury. Can be maintenance hiring if you hire a violent criminal who goes out and injures somebody on the train, punches out a passenger. Um, and I think it is a little bit negligent. I'll get to the second part of this. A little bit negligent to look at it and expect 12-year-olds to have the reaction time of professional baseball players, or even perfectly healthy 22-year-olds who don't play professional baseball.
We're
Um,
not superheroes in action figures. It took me 6 years to come
exactly.
up with that one. I haven't been saying that for 6 years, but, you do it
I
for a while, you come up with simplifications.
I have my own collection, but yes, we're not superheroes and action figures. I like that.
There you go.
And the other one is just strict liability. Strict
Uh-huh.
liability is it doesn't matter what you're doing, and it doesn't matter whether you're negligent at all. It's just a dangerous thing. An easy example is the storage of explosives. If I have a warehouse that houses fireworks and it blows up, it doesn't matter if one of my employees torched it. It doesn't matter if the sun was at record heat and I'm storing explosives. If something bad happens, I'm liable. And I think at this point, with all the exit velos, you mentioned the bats breaking. That's the other big thing. Hometown
Yeah,
favorite, Joey Votto for the Reds, actually
yeah.
bought a bunch of ash bats his last few years because he preferred ash. All the bats used to be ash. There's an ash borer now in the United States, and you can't get a good enough stick of lumber to carve bats. So people were switching to maple for being harder and having better exit velocity anyway. Now everybody hits with maple. Well, the problem with maple, it's harder and hits harder, but it also tends to crack. Like the it doesn't splinter in the way that you would see Bo Jackson snap a bat over his knee or his helmet and come apart at pieces. It tends to go along a vertical line, like from the handle to the head of the bat, which makes very sharp projectiles, and it's more probable that it breaks. So you have more likelihood of catching a bat in the stands than you used to. And I feel like it's if we argued it's strict liability, going to a baseball game where there's not proper protections in place, netting to at least the dugouts, if not the foul poles, just automatically should be I think it'd be a good argument before a judge. I don't know if I would say it rises quite to willful and wanton, but
Mhm.
that's kind of it. Like, I know this is a risk, and I just really, I have such a
But why
disregard
can't
for
they do
human
more?
well-being.
Why Yeah, exactly, and that's basically if people said, "Big picture, Jordan, what do you want?" I want these billionaires out, I want new billionaires in, I want an ecosystem where we all know what our expectations are. We were told in microprint when it was on a hard ticket. Is that respectful? And who's gonna even
Yeah,
study the microprint? Now we have to find it
exactly.
on the e-ticket, and then when we show up to the game, all of these parking lots are risky propositions. Inside the ballpark, one other person Brendan and I interviewed was a 10-year-old girl at a minor league game who was hit on the concourse buying a snack.
Eh,
You need to demonstrate exactly what the procedure is, and you never did. You kept it in microprint, and then once you're there, once you're in your seat, there could be a sign on your cup holder. Already, that's too late. We're not action figures, we're not superheroes. Jackie Robinson, Brooks Robinson had no reason being in those seats on their night off. They should have a tender moment with their loved one. The kids should be able to play patty cake, even people looking on their phone, as long as they're not talking too loud,
well,
because we
that
gotta
that's
concentrate on the game. But other than that,
that's
people should be
another
able to
one.
do whatever they want in their own space. But you see, you're attributing that has nothing to do with it. Let's say you wanna have a 30-second kiss with your girlfriend. There's nothing wrong with that. The kid's playing patty cake. I don't As much as I hate distraction with phones and on roads, you should be able to do include anything you want. Carry on business as long as you're not talking too loud, of course, because of course we want to focus on the game. Then I think it's almost like talking in a movie. If you're really going to talk on your, then it's a little intrusive. But it should have nothing to if you're quiet on your phone, you should be able to do business for an hour. And Dave, if you're still thinking that, you should be paying attention, we're not action figures and not superheroes. We weren't meant to be 100% ready. I want you to chill with your girl. I want the kids to play patty cake. Could you can create an environment? And if you can't, just tell us it never was like that and mud on your face for all the years for putting it in microprint. Dave, I've
So
been
so
talking
that's
about you for a while. So I just want to have a conversation. Again, I want to start the conversation, Dave. Brianna, you and I could then leave and let the room work it out. We just have to present to them everything they've missed. And that's the
well, the
spirit of
the
these
other thing I think they
conversations.
miss the
Yes.
other piece I think they really miss, Jordan, all of what
Yes.
you just said, 4 out of 5 millennials use their phone at the game. I get a
Okay.
daily notice from the MLB.TV app because that's how
Uh-huh.
I used to tune into Reds Dodgers games, and I'd listen to the
Mhm.
the Dodgers broadcast for Vince Scully.
Right.
They give me a player of the game, even if it's 0-0 in the 7th or 8th inning, I get the notice, like, I can't pick a player of the game. But if I'm
Uh-huh.
at the game,
Uh-huh.
MLB.TV, the Major League Baseball TV app, is
Uh-huh.
sending me a notice asking me to look at my phone while the
Uh-huh.
game's going on. They
Uh-huh.
encourage people to use their phones. They
Uh-huh.
encourage people to actively be distracted by their app,
No
put this
doubt.
up on Instagram for whatever
But
prize,
that's not
get
the
on the
reason.
jumbotron.
That's not the reason we get contacted by 99 other institutions. That's just that's one that makes it 100. We should be safe. Just tell us. And there'll be a dialogue. Risk takers sit here. Babies sit here. Loved ones, if you're going to get distracted, sit here. But
Right,
really, we're not met. Again, notification by MLB. Sure, that's not right, but we're not there to defend ourselves. You're just adding to the distractions, which is fine, and they shouldn't be contributing to it. But it's enough that they just haven't been leveling with us and telling us the risk. They know the data. We're meeting statistic people along the way who've signed NDAs. So once it's known, similar to the spirit of willful wanton conduct of what this is Judge Flanagan shared, hopefully she's in a position one day to connect with us and make a difference and be an advocate for saying, I believe they've known this since. And coming from Judge Flanagan would be pretty solid stuff. So we're just getting started, Dave. We're excited that you're here with us. And maybe you have more questions for us or another direction you want to go in.
yeah, I mean, the last thought on that is it's hard to argue the
Sure.
baseball rule is valid when
Yes.
baseball is the one distracting me. I should be paying attention, I assume the risk, and you're going, "Hey, look over here." Well, how
No
can I
doubt.
assume the risk when you
That's it.
distract?
Right. I understand, but
So,
4-year-olds are playing patty cake and they're with you and they shouldn't
of
be there.
course,
So that being said, and they don't have their phones. But so I'm
of course,
saying that's only just adds a little bit more of the madness. That's all I'm saying. It's not the primary. It's included in the mess. So let's just stay focused on that. Again, I don't
sure.
mind people doing office work for 2 hours as long as they're not talking too loud. Kids playing patty cake, having the tender smooch. It's all part of the game experience. But just tell you that you shouldn't be there to begin with. We're not action figures and superheroes. Dave, this is exciting and nice that you're part of this with us. If you have any more questions for us, Brianna may have a question for you. I want to wind down in a,
Yeah,
commonish
yeah.
way. What's up?
I wanted to say
Questions?
one more.
Please, please do. Of
Yeah, I wanted to add one more thing to what you said
course.
earlier.
Yes, please.
You mentioned that they don't have time is brain. The NFL has a concussion protocol. If it looks like you got your bell rung, you go to the side and they have a concussion protocol. There's nothing in place like that in a baseball stadium for injuries. And
Mm,
at the very least, they could use the EAMS for injuries. They could have an insurance scheme. It shows how little they actually care about
yeah.
fan well being and that they're trying to cover it up. I think that adds to the argument for willful and wanton. You know, people get hurt at ball games. You're a club owner. You have
Yes.
6 teams counting the big leagues: high A, low A, double A, triple A, spring ball. You know, people get
Sure.
hurt, and you
Yes.
care so little. You don't have medical staff on site, and you care so little. You don't even have like an insurance compensation scheme. If somebody loses an eye, it's worth X amount of money, which you would
Mhm,
have if you were an employer. You would have in many other non antitrust exempt places that don't have a
mhm,
baseball rule. It just
mhm,
has to be foreseeable. And I think it's
mhm,
time for them to change that. So I'm 100%
mhm.
with you. Brianna, did you have a
Oh,
question there?
I just had one more thought on that. So, of course, all those things definitely should have been in place, but prevention matters has never been in place, and that's where it comes down to. We don't want that situation of having that experience. But, of course, if it ever did happen, of course, we'd want all those things in place, but we just finally have to address the dissatisfaction of the status quo and legacy of it on how they've communicated risk factors to us. Preventive measures weren't properly in place. And I'm excited that we're talking, and I think Brianna may be ready for you. Dave.
Yeah, I have a three-part question because you have so many different perspectives that I think really benefit this conversation and this topic. So, would love it if you could walk us through your initial gut reaction to this foul ball issue. First, as someone who's played the game, who's been the guy on the field hitting the ball, then as a fan who dedicates, your time, money, energy to the sport, and finally as someone who practices law.
Okay. So as a player, say the 3 one more time. Wanna make sure I got those
Yeah,
locked in.
yeah, for sure. So first as a player, then as a fan, and finally as a lawyer.
Okay. So when it first came to me, gut reaction, yes, I've seen it. I still play softball. And there are times when I know the pitcher isn't terribly athletic and I'm extra careful to pull the ball and get it in the air. And that's with a squishy safety softball. Um, I've hit a few rockets and bounced them off a third baseman's shins. I've been hit by 90 something mile an hour heat before. It's hard to get out of the way of when you're in the batter's box ready for it. I don't think I realized quite how widespread it was. Like Jordan said, we aren't told about this. Sweep it under the carpet, doesn't happen. What are you talking about? Hey, nice pitch. Look at that. Turn back to the game and ignore it. So as a player, yeah, it's rough. I've caught before. I've had foul tips. I understand the injury a baseball can cause, and just go down the website and don't even watch the videos. Just skim down and look at the screenshots, the paused frame, and you can see the damage that this caused. People have died. People have been injured. I didn't realize it was quite as widespread, but if I really think about it mathematically, of course, there's 10 to 40 something thousand fans at every game, and there's 162 games times 15. 2 teams have to play, so it's not all 30 teams, but there's thousands of games every year. There are gonna be fans getting hit no matter what if we don't have some preventative protective measures, and maybe even if we do with balls going up over the net. Um, I don't think anybody really realizes, or most people don't really realize how dangerous it is. Um, as a lawyer, I'll say politely, I don't agree with the baseball rule. I realize there's an assumption of liability, but at the same time, it really comes down to Fallsgraf versus the Long Island Railroad back in the 20s. It was Justice Andrew and Cardozo went back and forth, and the liability is proximate cause. How proximate? So, butterfly flaps its wings in China and something happens over here. That's not proximate. It doesn't have the proximity. uh, but if there's balls coming off the bat at 100 miles an hour, it's very foreseeable that someone's going to be struck by one and injured. So the idea that we just exculpate baseball from any liability, I think is bad law. And it goes back to 1913 when they first did it. I think the Supreme Court case was 21 or 22. As a lawyer, I think the law changes as society changes. I mean, at one point in this country, we had slavery. You had to be a landowner, you had to be male, there were a whole bunch of rules on voting. And we've evolved and we've grown and we've learned that there are better ways and we've changed the laws as we go. I think this is one of those instances. I just think it's time for the body of law to catch up with society. And I think once we really examine it, that's it. Who needs a law on this? It doesn't happen. And then when you realize it does happen and it happens a lot, and for that 1% or less, it's very damaging at the very least. You bruise your shoulder, but you're traumatized by it. If you're losing an eye or suffering a traumatic brain injury, TBIs can linger. And certainly if, you're blinded or something that you live with for like you said, 2 or 3 generations, it gets passed down. It's like the concussion issue in football. Don't play football, don't let your kids play football, that whole argument, because they don't do enough for it. It's the, concussion movie with Will Smith a few years ago. I read, Dr. Amalu's book about that. Much the same, yeah, when I finally saw exactly how bad it is in baseball, yeah, I think it's just time to do something about that. Um, and so, as a ball player, I recognize it can be a rough game, especially if you're unprepared. And again, the game has changed and has gotten faster and higher exit velos and closer to the action. And much the same, fans are more distracted than ever. And I have no problem with that. Part of the joy of a baseball game is you hand the hot dog or the drink down the row, and you talk to the stranger next to you. You know, you can make friends at a ball game who you hang out with for a couple hours and go back to doing what you're doing. It's part of the culture from the very beginning that baseball is not supposed to be rapt attention, stare at the field for the full, it used to be up to 4 hours. Now all the games are 2.5 to 3 because they changed a few rules a few years ago. But yeah, 3 hours of staring at a screen is difficult. You don't do that at work. You have to look up and blink. You have to turn away. So if that's the expectation, I bought a ticket and it's in fine print, or I got an email with the disclaimers or, waiver of liability nonsense. I don't think that meets the legal liability. I think it's time for the body of law to catch up to the reality of what happens on the field and in the stands and parking lots immediately surrounding it. So I love what you guys are doing, and I think it's a really good advocacy to have that needs to happen. I'm glad you guys reached out to me and that I found this because it's a bigger problem than I realized. And I think that's, the first step to solving any problem is realizing there is one. So I think as we up the awareness of it, um, that will make it a little more tangible, a little bit more relatable. Hey, that could have been me. That could have been, somebody's kid that I know lives down the street or whatever. And I would hate for that to happen. I don't want to be a part of that story. I don't wanna hear that story. And what's the trade-off? It's not too expensive, and most people wouldn't care about the view. People who pay the most for tickets sit behind a glass wall in a luxury booth. So, that doesn't ruin the experience. I've done that with the firm I was at. I got to meet Tino Martinez and shake his hand. It's not any worse behind a glass pane on the TV, and it's not any worse behind a glass pane at the ballpark. How is it so much worse behind a net? The real argument in favor of not changing things, I really honestly don't understand it. It's kinda baffling. So, I think that's it. We just need more advocacy, we need more awareness, and as people learn about it through you guys and similar, I hope it changes. I really honestly think that would be a great thing for baseball fans, for just society in general, anything that prevents injuries or serious damage or even death is a good thing. Like, who wants people dying for no reason other than we just didn't feel like putting up the nets, we didn't have them before, watch out. I just think it's a really bad argument that watch out is the disclaimer that it's foreseeable and they should have some preventative measures. So I really hope they come around to it. And especially, I would say some lawsuits as well, Jordan, with the stuff where they're required to have it and they just haven't done it. That's inexcusable. That's not following the law. That's not following Major League Baseball's edict that everybody have it to the dugouts at all levels. There's just no excuse for showing up and not doing the right thing. It's the right thing for a reason, and it should be done. I think that's everything I need to know. I learned in kindergarten, right? So, um, yeah, that's kind of my final take on it, I guess. But I love what you guys are doing, and I'm glad I get to be some small part of it because I think it's something that definitely needs to be advocated for, and hopefully changes will be implemented that make the situation better.
Well, Dave, excellent, excellent summation. If that's the right word. Excellent summary of all things. We really appreciate this. I definitely believe that these conversations, people will all of a sudden see all the missteps, all the lack of, all the inaction. Preventive measures should have been in place. It's above my pay grade, Dave. It may be above your pay grade or Brianna's pay grade to determine exactly the ecosystem when it comes to architects, engineers, and designers, and protocols and conversations about how to remain unscathed, and also to include risk factors for age appropriate, and just tell them what we're talking about here. We all need to be on the same page, all need to know exactly what the baseball experience is inside and outside the ballpark. It's not rocket science. It's committed to the conversation, and we'll just keep on going down historically and present, and hopefully in the short future, we'll recall how back in 2026, business as usual was inappropriate. And I think we'll all hopefully reflect on that, and we'll have a universe of baseball where everyone has expectations of what we can expect. Baseball players will have an opportunity to play the game free and clear, as young athletes are expressing to me, and they do tell me they have anxiety swinging bats and worrying about hitting people. So why not finally make it safe and psychologically comfortable, comforting to the player who are young and speaking out. Some of the older guys, they've been doing it for so long, maybe they've just kept up the chant to their parents, but nobody else. And they've told mom and dad appropriate places to sit. Brendan and I have discovered that speaking to more than 30 baseball players who agreed to talk with us. And maybe they're reflecting on that experience from when they were playing and saying maybe more of us should have been in the know. Well, we are in the know, and we're going to make more noise about this, and more new people will find us. And Dave, you'll find us when you're ready again. So we're looking forward to the next time, everyone. Brianna, Dave, great day, great conversation, and we'll do it again soon, everyone.